Well, greetings, friends. I'm with my friend here, who you've seen on this channel before, and we're going to be reading through the Black Death and Abrupt Earth Changes in the 14th century, which was the 1300s. So I see you've made some notes here.
Yeah.
Do you want to give us an introduction to the subject?
Well, this is a thesis about 100 pages long.
Right.
Okay, so what you usually see is the Black Death is unparalleled in human history, and that's all you hear about. But
Right.
it's actually about something called the Little Ice Age from 1300 to 1850, so that 400 or 500 years is a really cold period.
Right.
So the crops failed and the climate changed, and so this is why they were susceptible to everything. Like you have a picture there and it looks like the guy's got measles.
Right.
But there's a woman talking to him in finger language, and she's probably telling him about a herbal remedy.
Oh, I see.
They use finger language, like in the Bible it says the sign of the beast is on your hand. See, but when you go to the marketplace from all over, it's like the Tower of Babel, so they had to barter with their hands. So that's
Interesting.
That's why. So anyway, that's they have very interesting graphics from the medieval period. It's a different world altogether.
It says 1290 to 1350, abrupt Earth changes, astronomical, tectonic, and meteorological events leading up to and culminating at the Black Death period at 1348.
Yeah, it starts to cool down around 1300, and about 2/3 of the people are in the ground before the Black Death even starts.
Right. Interesting.
So it's
So wait, this cool period, this Little Ice Age, was what, 150-year period roughly?
No, 1300 to 1850. So that's
1850. That's a long time period.
That's nearly 500 years.
Yeah, that's a long period.
Yeah.
That's news to me. I thought it was much shorter than that. Like there was the Little Ice Age in the 1600s or whatever.
There might be two peaks.
Okay.
This is the first peak and then another peak in 1600, but it definitely ran the Viking Empire out of business. Like Greenland was frozen out and Iceland just barely.
Right. So for those of the audience who might not know much about the Black Death, could you give them just a brief rundown of what was the Black Death exactly?
It's spread by this rat flea. It's called Yersinia pestis, the Black Death, and it most commonly transmitted by rodents. And the Vatican estimates 23,840,000 deaths, or 32% of the European population.
So it was a disease, a plague, which affected primarily Europe, but then didn't they say it came from the East?
Yeah, there would be about 60 million people from Asia up to Turkey, whatever. That would be the Mongol Empire.
So it started there, and then it made its way to Europe.
Yeah.
You were saying it's carried by the fleas are on the rats. The rats are bringing the fleas. The fleas are biting people, or just
they bite the rats, and then the rat drops dead, and the fleas go. The flea gets infected too, and then it starts biting like crazy because it can't get enough food.
Right.
Anyway, but people from all over Asia and Europe, they're more susceptible because there's famine, floods, and this little ice age.
They're more susceptible to die from a disease when their immune system has been weakened by malnourishment, or
when
they're not getting enough to eat.
They haven't had enough to eat for 4 or 5 years.
Right. Just the 23 million, obviously we don't really know how many people died, but how did they come to that estimate of?
That's what the church says.
Right. Well, the church was actually keeping records of who's baptized and who dies, and so they would have some way of knowing.
They have records of who gives them money and stuff.
Right.
If they're not getting money, then they
Right.
they strike it off the list.
But then the actual Black Death period at 1348, like it didn't last just 1 year. Like the 23 million people presumably died over
this was
a series of a number of years, 1346 to 1350. So that was the main one that hit. So that hit all of Europe, like England and Italy, Germany.
1346 is starting from the Crimea, Constantinople.
Oh, okay.
Right,
okay.
And then it makes its way into Italy in 1348.
Right, okay.
And then it gets into the rest of Europe.
Right.
It comes in, but they're so weak that they drop off like flies, apparently.
Right.
Usually a famine doesn't affect the wealthy people.
Because they're stronger, they're fitter.
Yeah.
Interesting. I see you've made some notes here, like about what happened, like leading up to the Black Death. 4000 BC, astronomical cycles drag the Earth into a peak warm period.
Yeah, that's Ice Age stuff. That's 6,000 years ago. All the ice is melted.
Right.
And then from then on, you're going to cool off.
And the Bible also gives this as the date of creation. From this point on, conditions for the northern hemisphere summer warmth become less favorable.
Yeah. So the Bible and the physics calculations, they come by their results independently, same number.
Right.
I have no idea how that. It's apparently a rather convoluted calculation when he says the creation is at 6,000 BC, but it just happens to be at the peak warm. All the way that the Earth is closest to the sun, it's most tilted toward the sun, and the ellipse is more like a circle, or whatever.
And then 1150 to 13. The years 1150 to 1300. The English population increases by 3 times.
Yeah.
Crops are farmed as far north as Greenland. Yeah, so this would be around when the Vikings were, or no, that was before.
It's right at the time the Viking Empire.
They were in Greenland.
Yeah.
And they were in Newfoundland, I think, as well.
They made it that far, but they were fighting with each other.
Right. Do you think they were fighting with the natives too, or?
They're fighting with everybody.
With everyone. So the medieval warm period ends after, 1250, and the cooling trend begins.
Yeah.
And you describe this as the start of a disaster in slow motion.
In slow motion, yeah. That's why what we have here with this rat flea.
Right.
And that is quite different.
Okay.
But to be fair, the textbooks, they usually describe this period as it starts around 1300, all the problems.
Right.
Famine and all that.
The growing season is shortened, I guess, and crop yields are lesser.
Yeah, well, the soil is depleted because the population grows exponentially. The soil's no good, and then the weather changes drastically.
Right.
It just doesn't support that population. From 1100 to 1300, Europe is becoming Europe.
Right.
Okay, they have their lingua boundaries,
right.
They speak Old English or Middle English and Middle German.
Right.
But the borders are getting established and all that, the cultures and all that.
In the year 1259, ice core samples, I guess that relate to around the year 1259, because I don't think they were taking ice core samples in the Middle Ages. Yeah.
No, they take ice core samples and they can just look at all the sort of layers and date it almost within 2 or 3 years, and they can see if it jives with tree ring samples.
Right.
So those are relatives.
Right.
And also they have silt samples, sea floor samples.
So based on ice core samples, there's an indication that I guess around or on the year 1259, there was a massive sulfur volcanic injection into the atmosphere.
Yeah. So they're conjecturing that maybe that changed the climate.
That would definitely prevent sunlight from reaching the Earth. Did they know where this eruption occurred?
I don't think they ever found it. They just found the sulfur layers, and it's not likely that would come from a meteorite. It's sulfur is from the ground.
Right. And then 1308 to 1320, Dante writes the Divine Comedy.
Yeah, and he's writing that when there's a famine, like nobody's eating. But
really?
There's not. They don't.
So there was already famine in Europe before this Black Death took hold.
Yeah, it'll be on the next entry.
Right. And so 1350 to 1320, erratic weather and land exhausted from the climate optimum leads to great famine in Europe, 30% population reduction.
Yeah.
Interesting. So this is earlier than 1348.
Yeah, so you have all these things happening just before the famine and weaken the people.
That's a huge reduction in population, 30%.
Yeah, you see that, but that wouldn't affect the wealthy people, the clergy. There's a record of it. They don't have as much money coming in, but
right. So 1331 to 1347, the Asian Chinese population drops from 120 million to 60 million before the plague enters Constantinople in 1347.
Yeah.
So is that basically like China?
There's the Mongol Empire from the Pacific Ocean over to Turkey. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it started earlier over there. And then we have 1342 to 43, the Great Magdalene Flood.
Yeah.
Which happened in late July, and it changed the topography of Germany permanently.
That washed away all the topsoil. Like we had something like that. It's called Hurricane Hazel.
Right.
1950s or something.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't notice it. They told us to hide under the table, but I didn't understand what they were talking about.
Right.
But there was Hurricane Hazel, and it just flooded all the ravines, so they passed a bylaw that says you can't build houses in the ravine.
Right, yeah, that's right.
Well, the 10 people, the city 10 people can live there.
Yeah, they can.
You can't build a house.
Interesting. So, but that's a huge, like Germany would be a large territory, so this rainfall that caused the flood would have affected all of, like a large portion of Europe, I guess.
There's some church or place called Mary Magdalene.
Right.
Okay, I forgot how that's the name of the flood. So it was like a big hurricane or something there.
Right. And what are they drawing upon to ascertain?
Oh, that's fairly well documented.
Right.
And they have all sorts of gullies in the Black Forest where the soil is washed away and you just have you're down to bedrock.
Interesting. So that would make it obviously harder to farm. You need the topsoil.
You can't grow carrots in the rock. Okay.
Where does the topsoil, doesn't it just get transported somewhere else?
Out to the sea.
Oh, out to the sea?
It's in the river, silt, whatever.
So not anywhere else that they could use it to farm?
No.
Yeah.
It's gone.
And then 1345 to 1347, just before the Black Death hits Europe, there are 3 consecutive years without a summer, and this is based on tree ring data. 3 consecutive years.
Yeah, so maybe even the rich people might be going hungry by now.
Right. And these years without us, I know we talked about this at the beginning, but it has to do with like astronomical cycles.
Yeah, this is called the Little Ice Age.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
So the big ice age, as I mentioned, finished 6,000 years ago, like 4,000 BC, and it runs for 100,000 years. It takes about 100,000 years to cover 2/3 of North America.
Right.
Okay, but you have equations of motion by Galileo, Newton, that predict the motions of the planets and all that, and it took till 1976 to do all the calculations to see that everything works out. You have an ice age based on the theory of gravity and the way the planets, Earth wobbles around the sun,
right,
and the moon and the other planets. They pull on each other. It's quite complicated.
Interesting.
They need your computer to do that. So it's, the big ice age is 100,000 years. Okay, and that's some sort of little wobble or something.
So that's the larger context that's causing this 3 consecutive years without a summer. Now, when they say without a summer, like surely it would be warmer than the winter, but not
enough to grow crops.
Not enough to grow crops.
It seems the problem is that the Gulf Stream is still warm, and then when it cools off, it just dumps all that moisture, and it was just constant rain for 3 years.
Interesting. Constant rainfall would cool things down as well.
Yeah, it's cold, but not necessarily frozen, but it's cold. Yeah.
But like, if crops aren't growing, would anything be growing really? Like, would
the trees
forests be dying off? And
they just sit there.
Right.
They grow a little bit.
Right.
The tree rings are very small.
Right. Interesting. And then in the 1330s, in China, the monsoon fails to appear. The monsoon is like what, heavy seasonal rainfall, like heavy rain.
Yeah, the monsoon comes in the summer, like it's super hot over Asia. It draws in all the moisture, and then it rains for a couple of months during the summer. And you can plant your rice, the water's up to your knees and all.
Like they lost half their population in China or the Mongol Empire.
Well, it was the system, like the Mongols would have Muslims as tax collector in China, and then the Chinese would typically murder them, and then the Mongol would take sides with the Chinese against the Muslims and all that. Like,
interesting.
Yeah, they conquered by making people fight with each other.
Right, and even into Eastern Europe.
So it's fragile. It's just a big dictatorship, and of course that's and what they say. I haven't checked all original documents. I don't speak to old Mongol language or whatever.
Right. And then this last note here, you're going to have to help me understand this, because we have cosmic rays, protons.
If you have ultraviolet light, it can create a photochemical smog, like in Los Angeles, they used to have these smogs in Britain that would kill up to 100 people a day.
Right. Was that during the industrial period in Britain, or?
No, it's just in the 50s and 60s when they burned coal by the megaton. Yeah, with the car fumes, nitric acid, and it makes a sort of photochemical smog that's poison. They used to have it in Los Angeles, but they changed the emission standards.
Right.
They had catalytical.
Right. Catalytic converters.
Yeah. So the cosmic ray means it's not a ray; it's a proton. It's accelerated to about half the speed of light from a supernova explosion, and it may have affected the climate, according to what they say.
Leading up to the Black Death period.
Yeah, that there was a supernova explosion at about the same time. But this is called the Little Ice Age.
Right.
And there may have been a volcano, but see what makes it go from 1300 to 1850. That's okay. It must be the movement of the planets around the sun that create.
And interestingly, I'm just thinking about the date 1850. What starts to happen after the year 1850s?
Well,
the world population takes off like crazy.
There's the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, that as well. Yeah.
And different farm techniques. The tractor comes along pretty soon. They had lots of cheap labor, by the way.
So that's basically giving us an overview of these Earth changes, which produce famine and rainfall, which washes away a lot of Germany's topsoil,
Yeah.
and short summers or lack of a summer.
Well, what he calls
Together
it,
with these even supernova events, which could
Yeah.
be a lot of stuff going on here.
It's
but,
not
yeah.
filtered out, but
Yeah.
it was definitely a slow motion disaster.
Right.
So are we prepared for these things?
Are we prepared today or back then? Well, they weren't prepared back then, or are we prepared today?
Yeah.
I guess. What would you say about that? No.
Well,
No.
has anything changed?
Yeah.
What's his? Galileo, he was persecuted, right? By the
Right.
church, except that he was, but not really.
Well, I don't know. What did they throw him in prison? They forced
They
him.
did.
They forced him to recant.
He was under house arrest.
Right.
Okay, so he would, academics who are not capable of doing legitimate research,
Right.
they don't want this guy around
Right.
because they're going to lose their lifestyle of sloth and luxury.
Right.
So they got to get rid of him. So, like, it's not the church decided that he's a heretic. It's somebody's got something to lose. So that's right. That's these fake academics. So the church and mainstream media, they're similar because they're a threat to our survival when they put out the fake news and they're run by these phony academics who.
Yeah, we're still seeing that today.
Who can't. Yeah, that's exactly what we're seeing.
What? Just to back up. When was Galileo active again?
1638, I think he published them.
Oh yeah, I always thought he was earlier than that. What did the Catholic Church have to lose by allowing Galileo's ideas about the cosmos?
Nothing really. It's just that you deal with the system, you deal with the bureaucracy, and maybe he wasn't so tactful as he should have been. But they're just stupid. Like he's a genius. He figured out the weight of air. It was about 400 times lighter than water. It's actually 800 times lighter than water.
Oh, okay.
So he was able to do that. And you have these people that they can't do simple arithmetic and that. So they don't need the bureaucracy when they have a smart guy around.
Interesting.
So it's jealousy, intrigue, and all that. It's not. See, the church. It's like you say, the Pope is not a god.
Right.
He never was.
Right.
So they once he gets that idea in his head, then the other guys can manipulate him, and that whoever's got the money. Like these positions are filled by the wealthy people, the academic university stuff.
Right.
So it's not just about nothing to do with theology, as far as I can say. So what we're saying is that the debauchery of the church is equal to the corruption of mainstream media because it's a threat to our survival.
So there was this Black Death. I heard that after the Black Death, the population obviously in a place like England was greatly reduced.
Yeah.
I've heard that raised the price of labor, so because there weren't enough workers in England following the Black Death. So therefore they could demand higher wages.
Something like that. There was considered to be a transition into the Renaissance for some reason. If everybody, half the population of Toronto dies, then you can just walk in the store and get a flat screen.
Do you think something like what happened in the Black Death period could happen again?
If the economy falls apart. See, it happened partly because of the population explosion and soil was depleted, there's no food, there's famine.
I think this is a lesson for us today, without me saying anything not which you can't say on YouTube, but with our current situation, people don't die just for out of the blue for no reason, like some crazy, I mean, I guess it can happen, but some crazy virus just strikes down healthy people out of the blue. It's not exactly the most popular, common thing to happen. There's going to be other factors leading up to such an event, such a crisis. Guess that pretty much wraps it up.
Okay, yep, we're good for this session.
All right.
We'll do it again.
We'll do it again some other time. All right. Hasta luego, amigos.